Inshallah ta'ala, my hearers will bear with me. This is I'm talking about the philosophy, the interpretive method of translating today, specifically of translating the Quran and understanding the Quran and the science of tafsir. So, Nasrullah and Tawfiq wa Taysir. In the name of Allah, most merciful and compassionate, I've entitled this is the introduction. There's a preface also that tells about the continuing relevance of the Quran before this, about a page and a half. This is longer, and we're going to take it in two sections this week at this time and next week, inshallah ta'ala, so it doesn't, otherwise it would probably deal the death blow to most of our attention spans. In the name of Allah, most merciful, compassionate, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. So I entitled it The Once and Future Hermeneutic. It'll be a difficult title for most people to understand who are not educated in the liberal arts. And the title is actually borrowed from a famous quartet of novels by T.H. White that were published in one binding as The Once and Future King in 1958. And it was about King Arthur, the legend of King Arthur, and how he was according to the legend, that he was ensorcelled and that he would reappear in the future at an indefinite date to save England from the like of what has befallen it today. So I called it, instead of the once and future king, the once and future hermeneutic. And hermeneutic is the philosophy, the interpretive philosophy. Like a philosophy of life, the person thinks of how he does things and how he what he wants to do. And hermeneutic is likewise, a hermeneutic is based on what they want to get out of the text that they're examining. And we said the once and future hermeneutic. Once, in the days when the ulama of tafsir were carefully attended to and were listened to, and future, inshallah ta'ala, after people understand again how much work they actually did and what results they have. But here, the once and future hermeneutic means the traditional way of understanding the Quran and how it has been allowed to lapse by interpreters of the Quran in English, and that inevitably it must be returned and it must come back because it's the only proper way to do so. And to demonstrate that it's the only proper way to do so, we've mentioned a number of points. These are not the only points, but only 7 of them, and they're fairly important. And we reached 7 points that out of the 135 previous English translations, none of them have incorporated these fields of meaning, these areas of meaning. And so inshallah ta'ala, so this is what we endeavor to do, inshallah. As I put it to myself, I don't know if I said it to anybody else, but I thought I was smart until I started trying to learn Arabic. And I thought I knew Arabic until I tried to understand the Quran. And so this is an experience that I'm trying to confine to a couple lines with some concrete principles that will enable anybody who hears this to understand something about the Quran that they have not, and the Arabic of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran that is not commonly appreciated today by Arabs or non-Arabs. Praise to Allah Most High, who inspired His slave Muhammad the Quran and wisdom as a mercy unto the worlds. Allah bless him and give him peace. This is the tale of a translation related because the Arabic text is the Quran that shall endure as long as Allah wills, while translations are ephemera that can only last until a reader's language changes beyond understanding what they disclose, necessitating a new interpretive effort. Tomorrow's translators and others interested in how and why the English in this work differs from previous renderings can read on, while everyone else, people who are bored with intellectual issues, may simply turn to the first page of the Quran below. I'm reading from the preface of the title of the book is The Quran Beheld, an English translation from the Arabic. Well, so tomorrow's translators and others interested in how and why the English in this work differs from previous renderings can read on, while everyone else may simply turn to the first page of the Quran below and begin. The translator's first encounter with giving texts their critical due was at the University of Chicago under the French philosopher Paul Ricoeur. He exposited readings from Hegel and later Karl Mannheim, giving painstaking attention to key details, historical and recent attempts to place them in the context of the larger thought of each, and the implications they held for a greater understanding of man through man's language and man's meaning. And he was quite a lecturer. At the University of Chicago, they had a huge lecture hall that was packed and standing room only around the edges. For him, he was what was termed in those days a continental philosopher. He talked about phenomenology, phenomenological investigations of texts and those who wrote them. And his way of lecturing was to take a part of a text and then to show how it expanded out to man and to the larger. And I was very interested also. And Salah Tawfiq wa Taysir. I remember I went to see him in his office hours. They had office hours in those days. The professors weren't expected to twitter their students to sleep to get stars, but rather the people were engaged in learning. And so I visited him. I think he was French, and the French love fish. And so I was fishing in those days, and I had brought a large charge of smoked and canned red salmon and I think dog salmon or silvers to sell in little cans. So I gave him a couple cans of each, and then so he was interested in buying some after that, and so I went to him and I explained to him that how the philosophers like Hegel had believed that only man, and in particular the Western European man, had mind, for their purposes. The Phenomenology of Mind was the book that we were reading. And I said, when you get a school of silvers and you put a seine around them and the purse, the bottom of the net, the fish die. Silvers are some of the biggest and smartest of the salmon species. There are about 5 that are harvested commercially in the Pacific. And they're some of the most intelligent. And when they saw that it was all up, they couldn't get out. They simply died. And I said, this tells me that they're dying of despair. And so we're talking about this, and he said, schools? He said, you mean in English you call the fish together schools? And I said, yes. And so anyway, he was a remarkable scholar who had a remarkable command of his material. And what did he say? He had cracked a joke at the end of our meeting. He said, or one of our meetings, he said, you're like the Marxian ideal, philosopher, or fisherman in the morning and philosopher in the evening. He said, so the next time the translator saw anything of comparable depth, when he lectured, you felt that you understood something about the world when he finished each of his lectures. And from Hegel's phenomenology, the language is not easy. It's a very technical language and difficult to understand, sometimes even the syntax of the. And so the next time the translator saw anything of comparable depth was a decade later in Damascus, where a traditional scholar at his home would devote up to an hour and a half per page in a single lesson teaching the magnum opus of the sapiential theosophy of Hatimi. Hatimi is Sheikh Muhyiddin. The readings were by a man who had never entered any school or academy except as a teacher. He was an orphan who ran errands, and he picked it up on the way. So he never entered any school or academy except as a teacher. The meanings, the relation to the book as a whole, even the syntax itself were often baffling. And university professors would come week after week to hear the difficulties overcome. He himself had read the book with a living master for decades, through whom he had acquired a hermeneutic, or authoritative mode of proceeding through the text to uncover its intent. It meant, as with Ricoeur, belonging to a larger interpretive community. The last was the scholar who collaborated with the translator on the present volume, an Amman. A man who memorized the Quran by heart in its 10 canonical recitations. His connection with its community of interpretation began with a degree in Quranic exegesis from the University of Jordan and continued with 3 more years in Yemen. A year and a half on his own with sheikhs in Sana'a in North Yemen. He commented that the Zaydis have remarkable command of the ulum al-ala, grammar and lexicography and the things that a tafsir specialist must have total control or must have a lot of great familiarity with. Continued with 3 more years in Yemen, a year and a half on his own with sheikhs in Sana'a in North Yemen, then another year and a half in the halaqat, or circles of the Ribat in Tarim, Hadramaut, in South Yemen. The translator found he exemplified the received wisdom and lands of the Quran, that the task of understanding it requires tafsir, or uncovering of the Arabic text. For my edification, Sheikh Yunus once mentioned that the Bedou, or a Bedouin lady who had a baby who got, slipped his baby blanket, might say, "Ulaydi mufassar." My little baby is uncovered, and so they still use. And this is what tafsir means. It means the cover has been lifted and the reality may be disclosed. Yeah. Or uncovering of the Arabic text, the privilege of those who truly know the Quran. Described by Allah as a momentous book whose verses have been clearly expounded. Fussilat ayatuhu. A pure Arabic Quran for a people who truly know. What do they know? For one thing, the Arabic language, not merely as it is written and spoken today, but the words of its lexicon and their original meanings, cognates, tone, nuances, and distribution, and how they interact with various prepositions and other particles. Then its grammar, then the shades of meaning implied by the various tenses and moods of its verbs, the rhetorical force of the several plurals of various nouns, in paucity, plenitude, and other implications. Its rhetoric, with its many emphatics, ta'kidat, found both in the syntax, order of the words matters in the Quranic Arabic as to what is being emphasized. And through the range of semantic meaning, morphology, and sound. In some ayahs, the sound it makes possible the tarjih, the understanding which of the positions of the various mufassirin is the one that should be adopted. Al-Qani' wal-Mu'tar. Mu'tar has various, when you're at Hajj, slaughtering your animal, you give to both the contented beggar, who doesn't press much, and the Mu'tar. Mu'tar, the very sound of it sounds like somebody who's trying to take something by irritating persistence from you, and this is what the actual tafsir means. So the sound has everything to do with the meaning, and sound, and much more, both in the ancient language itself and above and beyond it. As, for example, needed historical details about the revelation. Most of these were second nature to the first hearers, imbibed with their mother's milk, as it were, or lived out. While mastery of these things today requires a native or near-native fluency in literary Arabic, indomitable energy and perseverance, and hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of reading, a working familiarity with the corpus of both general and specialized standard exegetical reference works, to say nothing of, but especially in the case of the Quran, leave of its author, the leave of its author. In this connection, I'll tell my last story, inshallah. 17 years ago, I was alone in a high, empty room that was empty of everything except an iron bed frame and myself and Habib Omar. We were in Ainat, and we were visiting the house of one of his most illustrious ancestors, Abu Bakr ibn Sadim ibn Abdullah, one of the greatest of the Sufi figures. He wrote books and so forth in Tasawwuf, and he's one of the greatest of his ancestors. And this was his bed that he used to sleep in at the top of his home. It was very high in the air and narrow staircases up to the highest point. And he made his dhikr there. And places, the people who were in them and the dhikr that they made there have an effect. And so I explained to Habib that I was embarking on this work. And I asked him to make one of his ratibli, to make a dua of these Hadrami du'as that they excel in. And Habib Omar is a sahib sir, is a person with a secret anyway. And so he made a dua, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent this work without any power or strength on my part, by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. So this is what we mean by the leave of its author. The translator believes that this knowledge, the things that I have named here in this paragraph, is unlikely to be found in a single individual also endowed with an English aesthetic that might convey it, and that for one person to try is to underjudge the job. One person to try to understand and translate into presentable English or some other modern language is to underjudge the job. For this reason, the meanings of this book were taught to the translator by the traditional method of talaqi, or personal word-by-word instruction. This is one of the themes of the ulama of Hadramaut, talaqi, as they say it, and they consider it one of the adab of the faqih, of somebody who claims to have knowledge of Sharia. They have to have had talaqi, or they're not. Somebody who just knows what they think they understand from books is not someone who. For this reason, the meanings of this book were taught to the translator by the traditional method of talaqi, or personal word-by-word instruction, by Sheikh Ali Hani Yusuf, a scholar trained in Quranic exegesis and the lexicology, grammar, rhetoric, and other sciences of Arabic just mentioned. The translator found him an excellent philologist who could spend days researching the inflection of a single word to answer a question. To impart the understanding the translator has tried to convey in this volume, the two went over every word, letter, preposition, inflection, and case ending in the Quran from beginning to end for 7 years. The Sheikh teaching on his low table of open books, and the student writing the translation in pencil in tiny letters in the margin of his Quran, asking questions about possible ambiguities or misunderstandings, then later typing and polishing up the text. They gave preference among viable nuances and meanings of the text in places that bear more than one, to the most convincing positions of its greatest imams, whose works they compared and discussed in some detail for many a verse. Tabari, Zamakhshari, Abu Sa'ud, Ibn Ashur, Raghib al-Asfahani, Biqai, Razi, Alusi, As-Samin al-Hadabi, Baydawi, Qunawi, Ibn Kathir, Abu Hayyan, Sheikh Zada, Ibn Munayyir, Suyuti, Wahidi, Qurtubi, Zajjaj, and others familiar to those who know the literature or who would care to peruse the biographical notes appended immediately after the main body of the translation. All those that I've just named, have their biographies and what they contributed to the science of tafsir and their historical unfolding. When they finished, the translator saw that his acquired facility and Sheikh Ali's knowledge and skill had increased to the point that repeating the whole procedure might well improve the result. This was effected in another 8 years. Sheikh Ali worked full-time as before in preparation and research without his previous notes. His thirst for exhaustive detail, tenacity for the research required, and even the tone of his delivery of the text and commentary evoked in the translator something of what it evoked in him, and materially helped. The translator retranslated from scratch everything he heard a second time on the other margin of his Quran's pages. And the medad was coming down in these impromptu, or these in the immediate translation, the most forcible expressions and the best expressions that I was able to come up with were the first draft, hearing it and working on it and asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If there's a secret in this book, it's tadarra, tadarra ilallahi azza wa jal. And this was frequent in our sessions when I was asking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help. Tadarra means someone in the last extremity of need, begging Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for some help. And this is, I know. So the translator retranslated from scratch everything he heard a second time on the other margin of his Quran's pages. Sometimes I would erase the first ones so I could make some room for that. The translator made audio recordings of nearly every lesson with the Sheikh over the 15 years. The last 2 years have been spent in writing the auxiliary material for the book, such as the biographies and the other things that we've mentioned in this introduction. I know. Which the translator made audio recordings for nearly every lesson with the Sheikh over the 15 years, which covered 1 page at a time, as well as many of the follow-up questions finalized in subsequent lessons. During the period of the final revision, the translator's wife from Sahel re-listened to the recorded sessions of the second round as she had to the first, checking the English text word for word and giving corrections and advice, with the translator returning to Sheikh Ali for further research on points requiring it. For the sake of thoroughness, she returned to 6 previous translations, others' translations, something the translator had purposely abstained from during the whole period of his own work to keep it free of received English renderings. 3 for the beauty of their English, and 3 for comprehension of the meaning from Arabic. But she found little to take from them, and that all 6 had missed a number of key areas of the Arabic essential to its meaning, most of them falling in the traditional curriculum of Quranic Arabic under the heading of balagha, or rhetoric, which Sheikh Ali had been accustomed to point out to the translator in virtually every verse. That is, The difference between the translator's hermeneutic by talaqi, or personal instruction, questions and answers, led to substantive differences from previous translations on many verses. These differences on questions of meaning do not arise from rarities, but from ubiquitous features found throughout the Quran, the very warp and woof of its mighty language, referring to the cross strands of the weaving a carpet, warp and woof of its mighty language, the fabric of its being, is shown by the number of times cited below that they appear in its text. Now, the 6 translations chosen had been among the best, but wanting to know how general such gaps in meaning were in previous translations of the Quran, the translator contacted Professor of Islamic Studies and History, Ahmed Khan, at the American University in Cairo. He was preparing an article for journal publication covering the whole sweep of previous English translations, from George Sale's in 1734 to the end of 2021, and had acquired copies of all of them from various lands, numbering some 135 works. There were some that were before George Sale, but they were too miserable to even consider. They were translated from the French and other things, excluding only partial translations and translations from languages other than Arabic, such as Urdu to English. The translator told him of the number of crucial areas of meaning missed by all 6 major translations his wife had examined. He replied that these, and likely more, were absent from the entire collection of previous translations his article would cover. If true, this means the present volume's interpretive methodology has uncovered matters of Arabic meaning in the Quran that no previous English translation has seriously incorporated. We now turn to a number of the most significant, 7. I didn't want to go on and on. I could have talked about verbs and Fath al-Idgham and other matters, but I stuck to just 7 questions. And they will be long enough for most anybody to endure. We now turn to a number of the most significant to show their importance in understanding the original text. The first of them, thumma. Well, everybody knows what that means. The first is the conjunctive adverb thumma, which invariably appears in past translations as and or then, indicating the simple succession in time between what it conjoins, or the lengthiness of the disparity between their respective times. Now, traditional scholars of the Quran, including those we have mentioned above, identify a number of different meanings for thumma, such as a disparity in time, taraqi zamani, as in the verse, whoever commits an ill deed or wrongs himself, thumma, then even at length, asks forgiveness of Allah while there is still time, shall find Allah all forgiving, all compassionate. B, disparity in time to express perpetuity, alwaysness. Taraqi zamani lid-duwam, as in, verily those who say, our Lord is Allah, Rabbun Allah, thumma istaqamu, then follow ever after. This is what thumma means here. But the right need never be feared for, nor shall they grieve. Or say, journey in the earth, and however long you take, thumma, just look at how was the end of those who cried lies. Or the verse, those who spend their wealth in the way of Allah, thumma, meaning never again after, to remind those given of it, or offend them, they shall have their wage with their Lord. C, disparity of rank, taraqi rutbi, as in, so woe to those who write the book with their own hands, thumma, and yet more outrageous in enormity, is what thumma means. Say over and over, this is from Allah Himself, to buy a paltry price thereby. Here, much of the point of the verse is lost if one does not realize the disparity in rank between the 2 crimes. One is heinously worse even than the first. Or the verse, thumma, then even above and beyond these primordial laws, is what it means, did we vouchsafe Moses the book to perfect all blessings upon whomever would excel in good and clearly set out everything needful, and because of a mighty guidance and mercy, that haply in the encounter of the Lord they might believe. So thumma stands in for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 English words. Namely, then even above and beyond these primordial laws that Allah has just enumerated before saying this, did we vouchsafe Moses the book. D, disparity in rank to express incredulity. Tarahi rutbi lil istib'ad. As in, they know the blessings of Allah, yet incredibly, thumma, deny it. And most of them are rank unbelievers, where again, much of the point is missing without a sense of the incredibility of the denial. E, disparity of rank of importance of the information. Tarahi rutbi li-irtiqa al-akhbar. As in, it is He who created you from moist clay, and what is more, has set a term for each of you to reach. F, disparity in time and rank. Tarahi zamani wa rutbi. And He taught Adam the names, one and all. Thumma, then after, and more telling. Showed all those names to the angels and said, tell me the names of these if what you say is true. Or the verses, thumma, then after, and more momentous, are all of you to die. Thumma, then after, and greatest in wonder. On the day of resurrection shall you be brought forth alive. These are the main uses of thumma, for otherwise they often overlap or combine according to the argument and context of the verses. The combined forms D and F and others are common, not rare, among the 338 instances in which thumma appears in the text of the Quran. The intent of these verses is not adequately conveyed by using the English words then or and which are but a superficial representation of the first meaning above. One finds a discussion in the greatest of the classical exegeses in situ in the verses, or can read about them in the excellent Min Asrar Huruf al-Atf fi Dhikr al-Hakim al-Fa' wa Thumma by Muhammad al-Amin al-Khudri of Azhar. And its publication data and every work that we cite in these appendices is found in the bibliography. 2, the emphatic indefinite. The second thing found throughout the Quran is the emphatic use of the indefinite. The indefiniteness, or tankir, of nouns in the Quran has been uniformly rendered in previous translations the same way it is normally denoted in English, by the decidedly unemphatic indefinite article a or an before them. To refresh our memories, in the verse about Cain burying Abel, and Allah sent a crow, ghuraban, probing the earth, fi al-ard, to show him how to hide the shameful remains of his brother. The word crow, ghuraban, is indefinite, that is, any sort of crow, while the earth is definite, namely the earth beneath our feet, which we all know. Now, the primary meaning of the nakira, indefinite in Arabic, is not known, and is the opposite of the grammatical term ma'rifa, or definite, or known, marked by el, or the. But in Quranic Arabic, the indefinites signifying not known often means its subject is in some way unheard of. Again, this is a very critical detail. But in Quranic Arabic, the indefinite signifying not known often means its subject is in some way unheard of. Put simply, such an indefinite noun is not unemphatic, as it is in English, but emphatic to the utmost. Omitting instances when it is merely used to say that the object is but a single thing, ifrad, a crow, as above, as the indefinite normally means in English, this other emphatic meaning is found 6,100 times in the Quran, in 3,520 of its verses, or 56% of the verses of the Quran. That is, in most of the Quran. It is remarked upon by the tafsirs of Alusi, Ibn Ashur, Abu Su'ud, and others. Indeed, hardly possible for them not to notice. What does it emphasize? A, plenitude, takthir, such as the verses, wujuhun, a multitude of faces that day shall beam with joy, at their Lord wholly agaze, which give an idea of the vastness of the divine mercy. A multitude will be agaze at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Or the verse in Surah Nur, or like myriad deep shades of darkness, dhulumatin, in a fathomless sea, spread over with mighty waves, breaking over them waves yet mightier, reaching up towards towering black thunderheads above, of blacknesses, a multitude, dhulumatun, one upon another. When he pulls out his hand, he cannot even see it, and whom Allah gives no light, has no light at all, which stresses the plethora of adversities against the benighted. B, fewness, taqleel, such as the verse about some of the people of the book, Ahl al-Kitab, and you will always find them the most grasping of all mankind for any last pathetic shred of life, hayatin, even more than idolaters, in Surah Al-Baqarah, where the total lack in their faith of any longing for the next world is laid bare by the extreme diminishment, any last shred of the word life, hayatin, together with the second combined meaning of tahqir, or contempt, for which reason we've put pathetic, any last pathetic shred of life. Ahras an-nas ala hayatin. C, might, or exaltedness, ta'zim wa tafkhim, such as the verse in which Solomon asks his retinue, which of them will bring him the throne of Sheba? A Ifritun, a powerful, cunning fiend of the jinn, said, I shall bring you it before you even rise from holding court, and I am mighty and trustworthy enough to do so. D, contempt, tahqir, such as the verse, as soon as the envoy reached him, Solomon said, do you ply me with paltry wealth, bimalin? Or the verse of those of Sodom, that his people gave no answer but to tell each other, expel all those with Lot from your town. Verily they are unasun, a miserable handful of better folks who style themselves too pure to do as we do, which combines fewness, handful, and contempt, miserable, with the frequent Arabic distribution of nas. When you say so-and-so, bint nas, means she's a girl of societal standing in society. So, with the frequent Arabic distribution of nas, or people, for people of standing in society, which is rendered as better folks, to express the speaker's scorn for the God-fearing. Combinations of two significations of the indefinite are very common in the Quran, especially in the Meccan passages. C, being lost to all knowledge, غير معين, as in the verse, slay Joseph or cast him away, ardan, atrahuhu ardan, hopelessly far lost in the land. And the face of your father will be free for you, and once he is gone, you may be thoroughly righteous men, from which the finality of Joseph's intended fate is plain. Off with him. F, horror, tahwil, such as the verses, verily it shall shut them horrifically in, alayhim mu'sadatun, locked and barred fast with dreadful hell bolts, wrought massive in length, fi amadin mumaddadatin, about the utter woe of a fate with no hope of escape. G, rarity, nudur, as in the verse, such as the verse, "O you who believe, fear Allah, and let any rare soul that will, nafsun, always consider what it has sent ahead for an unspeakably dire tomorrow." Lighadin. And so, where the indefinite of the former, nafsun, is for rarity. Let any rare soul that will always consider just what it has sent ahead for an unspeakably dire lighadin, for an unspeakably dire tomorrow, where the indefinite of the former is for rarity and the latter for horror. Or the verse that we might make it as a reminder, and the rare heedful ear, udhunun wa'iya, وَتَعْيَهَا أُذُنٌ وَاعِيَةٌ. And the rare, heedful ear, أُذُنٌ وَاعِيَةٌ, comprehend it, where the rarity makes the ears of hearers more attentive to what Allah is saying. Further uses and combinations of tankir, of the indefinite, are found in the body of the translation below. Lots. Missing this emphatic indefinite is probably the greatest single leak of meaning and nuance in prior English translations. All seem to have made a false analogy between modern written Arabic, which no longer uses the indefinite for such purposes, and the Arabic of the Quran, which everywhere does. A stronger hermeneutic could have made a difference, or a stronger appreciation of the achievements of tafsir. 3, the third point of my 7. Fight fatigue. Reversed masculine and feminine forms. A third feature of the language of the Quran, untranslated into English, is the occasional use of feminine verbs for the actions of men, or vice versa, or to use feminine endings, like te marbuta, on otherwise masculine nouns. Both have an intended significance. Like the yang and yin of Chinese culture, masculinity in the ancient tongue of the Arabs connotes strength, boldness, and forthright directness, while femininity represents the obverse sign of the coin, tenderness, mildness, delicacy, and artifice. And the male is not the like of the female. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. When the words or deeds of men are metaphorically feminized in the Quran, for example, by using she said, qalat, for he said, qala, it usually carries various nuances of the gentle sex that are inappropriate for men and meant to blame them, or that they said or did something in itself errant and blameworthy. More rarely, it connotes feminine nuances that are appropriate for men and intended as praise for them. Such gender reversals can imply a number of things. A, contempt and deprecation, tahqir with them. As in the verse, the desert tribesmen emptily say, qalat al-Arab, we have embraced true faith. So you have not embraced whole faith, but rather say, we have submitted in Islam, while whole faith has not yet entered your hearts, indicating that they were not saying it with their hearts. Or the verse, the Jews, qalat al-Yahud, the Jews have pathetically said, the Christians are on nothing. And the Christians pathetically said, qalat, the Jews are on nothing. While both assiduously read the scripture, just so have those tribesmen who know nothing of any scripture said their very words. Pathetically, because both religions share many of the same scriptures and religious values, so should be more honest than to call it nothing in the hands of their counterparts. Contempt and deprecation also apply to noun forms, such as ad-dalal, misguidance, when they are given feminine endings, ad-dalala. Such as in the verse, truly we have brought forth in every people a great messenger to worship Allah and shun the abomination of deviltry. So some of them did Allah guide, while others incurred ad-dalala, pathetic misguidance. So but journey on the earth and just look how is the end of those who cry lies. which indicates the ease with which they could have fended off such paltry means of misguidance had they but chosen to. There are many other meanings for feminizing masculine nouns, such as tremendousness and horror, ta'zim wa tahwil, as in the verses, "In the name of Allah, most merciful and compassionate, when the inevitable al-waqi'ah falls, no soul may belie its befalling, abasing and exalting," in which al-waqi'ah, or the actual event, is transformed by feminization into the inevitable, whose tremendousness and horror the translator has rendered in its place through capitalization and shortness of line length, since terseness is power in English and an overabundance of adjectives or adverbs is generally flaccid. The terminal soft H sound, ha, itself conjures up woe, shock, and horror in many an Arabic word. Wahik. And the feminine ending, te marbuta, or an H alone at the end of a verse line, is particularly well suited to fill sapient hearts with it, with horror, as can be felt in the audio inimitability, ijaz sauti, of apocalyptic Meccan surahs like Surah 69, the indisputable, al-Haqqa, or Surah 88, the whelming doom, al-Ghashiyah. Feminizing masculine nouns has been characterized in general by Ibn Ashur as a hyperbole of quality, mubalagha fi an-naw', an intensifier of their meaning, as in words like Khalifa in the verse, "And remind them when your Lord said to the angels, I shall place a noble reigning deputy, Khalifa, on earth. Well, Adam, the Khalifa, was male." B, delicacy, tenderness, and empathy, lutf wa riqqa wa hanan. As in the verse, their messengers, qalat lahum rusuluhum, their messengers calmly told, qalat, them, "We are not but men like you, yet Allah bestows favor beyond thanks on whomever He wills of His servants," praising their diplomacy in meeting scorn and denial with affability and premises that both sides could accept. So they calmly told them, or gently told them, not saying I and this, but Allah shows His favor to whomever He wills. That's why it hit me instead of someone else. So Allah praises their diplomacy in meeting scorn and denial with affability and premises that both sides could accept to make their message more acceptable to whom they were speaking. C, strength and power, quwwa wa shidda. When the masculine verb is used in the place of a feminine, as in the verse, some ladies spitefully spread around qala in the city. The wife of the vizier seeks to seduce her young bondsman. Qala niswatun fil Medina. Expectation, we call it. Okay? But the masculine is used. She is rent to the depths of her heart with love. Verily, we see her plain astray, indicating that this was too strong and catty an initiative to take upon themselves at their own whim, and they should have refrained from it as proper reserved ladies. Or the verse, "And call on Him in all fear and hope. Verily, the mercy of Allah is very near indeed, qaribun, to those who excel in good," where mercy, rahmah, is feminine, and would normally take a feminine predicate, for which the stronger masculine predicate, qaribun, especially juxtaposed with what people expect would be there, qaribatun, rahmah, where the stronger masculine predicate, qaribun, stands in to rhetorically underscore the sheer closeness of this divine attribute to those who would draw near to the divine. This reversal of genders is less frequent for nouns than verbs, but in both is a very significant aspect of the Quran. Zamakhshari treats it in some places in his tafsir, but the best to exposit it is Biqai, who, not coincidentally, is also one of the best who explain how each verse carries forth the argument, action, and theme of the surah it is found in, an aptness which requires a good sense of nuance and connotation. 4. Demonstrative pronouns for respect or contempt. A fourth point undiscovered in the Quran by any prior English translations is the use for exalted respect, ta'zim, or contempt, tahqir, of freestanding demonstrative pronouns such as this, hada or hadihi, male and female, that, dhalika or tilka, male and female, these, ha'ula'i, and those, ula'ika. Examples are many. A, the masculine form of this, hada, is used for contempt, tahqir, in some 23 verses of the Quran, 8 of them by the polytheists of Mecca, in reference to the Prophet, Allah bless him and give him peace. As in the verse, and they whisper together in hushed converse, those who commit idolatrous wrong, is this wretched soul, hada, but a human being like any of you? Would you embrace bewitchment when you see full well? Reminding us that even when the worst revile the best, noble souls remain dauntlessly steadfast in their purpose through their knowledge of the divine. Or the words of a devil about someone he is about to have flung into the hellfire on the last day. In the verse, his inseparable, ominous companion, qala qarinuhu, shall say, this pathetic being, hada, with me, is ready. Though the most pathetic thing about him is that he listened to his devil. Or the verse about the Quran, and those who disbelieve say, this miserable wordage, referring to the Quran, hada, is nothing but a great fabricated lie he has forged. And other people abetted him at it, recording their unbelief against them. It is something also used for ta'zim, tremendousness, such as in the verse, those who make remembrance of Allah standing and sitting and on their sides at rest, and who reflect on the creation of the heavens and earth. Our Lord, you have not created all this, hada, in vain. You are far above that. Out of awe for the majesty of the one who effortlessly created the entire cosmos from nothing. The feminine form of this, hadihi, is used for the same purposes. As in the verse about the denizens of hell, the strikingly strange similitude of the good that they expend in the pathetic life of this world, هذه الحياة الدنيا, is like that of a gale wind in which was deathly biting cold that struck the tillage of a people who wronged themselves and laid it waste. Nor has Allah wronged them, but they only wronged themselves. Where the pronoun here, the pathetic life of this world, هذه الحياة الدنيا, the pronoun هذه, merely strengthens the contemptibility intrinsic to the expression life of this world, الحياة الدنيا. Wherever it is used, it means something pathetic in the Quran, its very construction. Literally, the nether life, wherever the two words appear together in the Quran. And so too, nor is the pathetic life of this world, هذه الحياة الدنيا, but a frivolity and game. And verily, the final abode, it alone is the life that is vibrantly forever alive. The latter, hayawan, lahi al-hayawan, did they but know. So, I know, it alone is the life that is vibrantly forever alive. The latter being the real word for human life. Just as the word this in English refers to something that is in some way near, we say this as opposed to that, while that refers to something far, so too the Arabic counterparts of that, the masculine dhalika or feminine tilka, also refer for the purposes of respect or contempt to something far or lofty in rank, ali, rutbah, in good or evil. That is, something way up there in meriting respect or deserving contempt, or occasionally in horror. Because it is often indicated in read or spoken English by tonal emphasis in English on a particular word, the translator has sometimes expressed it with shorter line breaks, showing where the emphasis should fall, putting the demonstrative pronoun as the only word of the line, or at the first of the line, or with various intensifiers, as in the verses, And whoever obeys Allah and the Messenger shall be with those Allah has truly blessed, of the prophets, the utterly true, the martyrs, and the holy righteous, and how excellent are those as companion. All that is the very favor of Allah. ذَلِكَ فَضْلُ اللَّهِ. And Allah suffices to know everything, which emphasizes that both the obedience and its mighty reward are of the vast bounty of Allah. Or for Balaam, in the verse right after Cain slaying his brother Abel, لِذَلِكَ, for the utter villainy of that, did we inscribe upon the children of Israel that whoever shall take a life for aught but a life, or wreaking baleful corruption across the earth, shall be as if he had killed all mankind together, and whoever saves a life shall be as if he had saved all mankind together. The feminine that, tilka, is similarly used, as in the verse, that incomparable final abode have we made, tilka darul akhirah, have we made for those who want no haughty supremacy on earth or any corruption, and the final issue is to the God-fearing, drawing attention to the incommensurability of the reward of in the next life, to the intentions and deeds that Allah wants from man in this. The one is by no means comparable to the other. Or the verses, what do you have the males and he, subhanahu wa ta'ala, but females? Then that, tilka, is a division rankly stinting. Or the position in sound in the second verse of the first two words together with the exclamation mark at the end, in English, conveys something of the pronoun's contempt for the disparity. C. The human plural of the demonstrative pronoun this is these. Ha'ula, hada, and ha'ula. Each of these two pronouns being nearer to us than that, and its pronoun those, ulaik. Each of these plural pronouns are used for praise and blame in the same way as their singulars are above. That is, these, ha'ula'i, is used just as hada and hadihi are used above in A, and those, ula'ika, because of the same connotation as something far or lofty in rank, aliyah rutbah, for better or for worse, in the same way that dhalika and tilka is used in B above. Among the examples of the uses of the human pronoun these people, ha'ula'i, used 16 times in the Quran for blame, is the verse, here you are, ha'ula'i, ha'entum ha'ula, here you all are, being these fools, ha'ula'i. You have argued for them in this world, so who shall argue with Allah for them on the day of resurrection, or who be their defender? Where you rank high in folly for pleading for the indefensible. Or the verse, those for whom we vouchsafe scripture, judgment, and prophethood. So if these wretched souls, ha'ula'i, now deny these things of any prophet, we shall certainly consign true faith therein to a noble people, never to disbelieve in them. Which underscores the difference in the people of the book between what their forefathers were and what they and the unbelievers of Quraysh now do, and why Allah may supplant them with others more receptive to His message than they. Of the examples of those ula'ika that blame among 84 in the Quran are the verses about the people of the book, and they say to those who disbelieve, these idolaters are more rightly guided in path than those who believe. So vile as those, ula'ika, are whom Allah has truly cursed, and whomever Allah curses, you will never find any to help him. Cursed because their animosity against the religion has led them to lie about their own convictions in order to misguide others about it. And in praise, among them some 85 in the Quran, is the verse, those, ula'ika, theirs is an incomparable share bestowed because of all they worked for. And Allah is unerringly swift to reckon, in which the translation suffices with a pause after the word those, to emphasize their special rank with their Creator. And with this, we conclude for today, and we'll begin with a highly technical and highly important new subject. Number 5 out of the 7. Adverbs of chronology, qabl and min qabl and ba'd and min ba'd and min fawq and others, inshaAllah ta'ala. And how the time in which something happens is of the utmost importance in understanding what on earth the sentence means. And this is another untouched area. And Nas'alullah tawfiq wa taysir. And inshaAllah ta'ala we'll talk about this in the coming Friday.